His schoolmates called him Lazarus, the boy who kept coming back from the dead. He spent a year in a hospital at 6, 2 more years at 13. He missed so much school that at 8, he could not read. He grew up in the poorest streets of Liverpool, in a house his father left when he was 3. By every rule of the world he was born into, he should have vanished into a factory and never been heard of. Instead, he became one of the 4 most famous men on earth. He played on every Beatles album. He gave the greatest band in history its heartbeat. Phil Collins calls him vastly underrated. Modern drummers still can't copy his feel. Today he turns 86, still touring, still smiling, still flashing the peace sign. This is the story of Richard Starkey, the boy they called Lazarus, the man the world calls Ringo. Richard Starkey was born on July 7, 1940, at 9 Madryn Street in the Dingle, one of the poorest districts of Liverpool. His father left when he was 3. Richie saw him barely 3 times again. His mother Elsie cleaned houses and worked in pubs to keep them alive. In the summer of 1947, 6-year-old Richie was rushed to hospital. His appendix had burst. Peritonitis had set in. As they wheeled him into the operating theater, he asked the nurse for a cup of tea. She said, "When you come round." It was 10 weeks before she could keep her promise. He fell into a coma. 3 times doctors told his mother he would not survive the night. One of those nights was the eve of his 7th birthday. He survived. He spent a full year in Myrtle Street Children's Hospital. When he finally recovered enough to run, he fell out of his hospital bed and tore his stitches open. They had to operate again. He returned to school at 8, unable to read or write. His classmates nicknamed him Lazarus. Then, at 13, it happened again. Tuberculosis, the disease of the Liverpool poor. 2 more years, a sanatorium in the countryside, away from the city smoke. His education was over. He would never sit an exam in his life. But in that sanatorium, something was waiting for him. 3 times his mother was told he wouldn't survive the night. Once the night before his 7th birthday. What are the odds that this boy becomes a Beatle? To keep the sick children occupied, the sanatorium staff formed a hospital band. A music teacher came in with tambourines, maracas, and little drums. She pointed at colored dots on a chart. You hit your instrument when she pointed at your color. 13-year-old Richie was given a drum. He hit it. Something happened in that moment that he has spent 70 years trying to describe. He said later, "I only ever wanted to be a drummer from then on." Between sessions, he made his own mallet from a cotton bobbin and beat rhythms on the cabinet next to his bed. His grandparents offered him a mandolin, a banjo, a harmonica. There was a piano in the house. He refused all of them. Only the drums. Back home, he played along to his stepfather's jazz records by beating biscuit tins with sticks. At 16, he worked in factories. At 18, his stepfather Harry carried a second-hand drum kit home through the streets of Liverpool. It cost £12. It changed the history of music. By 20, Richie Starkey was the most in-demand drummer in Liverpool, playing with Rory Storm and the Hurricanes. He wore rings on every finger. People started calling him Ringo. And across town, 3 guitarists in a struggling band were quietly watching him play. A hospital band, a chart with colored dots, a boy hitting a drum for the first time. Where did your favorite musician's story secretly begin? In August 1962, the Beatles fired their drummer Pete Best and asked Ringo to join. The fans rioted. They stood outside the Cavern Club chanting, "Pete forever, Ringo never." One furious fan headbutted George Harrison and gave him a black eye. Paul McCartney never forgot Ringo's first real moment with the band. They played Ray Charles's "What Did I Say?" McCartney said, "I remember just standing there and looking at John and then looking at George, and the look on our faces was like, "What is this?" He added, "And that was the moment. That was the beginning, really, of the Beatles." What Ringo brought could not be taught. He was a left-handed drummer playing a right-handed kit. So every fill came out slightly backwards, slightly late, completely his own. He called himself your basic offbeat drummer with funny fills. The funny fills became the sound of a generation. Ticket to Ride, Rain, Come Together, A Day in the Life. Phil Collins said, "The drum fills on A Day in the Life are very complex things. You could take a great drummer today and say, 'I want it like that.' He wouldn't know what to do. He never took a drum solo unless forced. He never played a note that didn't serve the song. John, Paul, and George could all play drums. None of them could play like Ringo. The sick boy from the dingle had become the heartbeat of the biggest band in history. A left-handed drummer on a right-handed kit. His mistake became a sound nobody can copy. Is imperfection sometimes the whole secret?" By the summer of 1968, the biggest band in the world was quietly falling apart. The White Album sessions were heavy with tension. Engineers were regularly asked to leave the room. Ringo was often the first to arrive at the studio and sat waiting, alone, for the others. He felt his playing was suffering. He felt like an outsider in his own band. On August 22, 1968, during rehearsals for Back in the USSR, Ringo quit the Beatles. He was the first Beatle ever to leave. He told John, "I feel like an outsider. You three are so close." John said, "I thought it was you three." He told Paul the same. Paul had thought the same thing too. All four of them felt like the outsider. Nobody had ever said it out loud. Ringo took his family to Sardinia on a yacht borrowed from Peter Sellers. One afternoon, the captain told him how octopuses collect shiny stones and tin cans and arrange them in front of their caves, like gardens. Ringo thought that sounded wonderful. He picked up a guitar and wrote "Octopus's Garden." 2 weeks later, a telegram arrived on the boat. "You're the best rock and roll drummer in the world. Come on home, we love you." He came home. He walked into Abbey Road and found his drum kit buried in flowers, spelling out, "Welcome back, Ringo." He said, "I felt good about myself again." And then the White Album really took off. All four Beatles secretly felt like the outsider, and nobody said it until Ringo walked out. How many bands, friendships, families work exactly like this? When the Beatles ended in 1970, many wrote Ringo off first. He answered with hit after hit. "It Don't Come Easy," "Photograph," "You're 16. In 1979, his childhood illness came back for him. His intestines failed, and he nearly died once more. Lazarus survived again. 3 weeks after leaving hospital, he was on stage, playing at Eric Clapton's wedding beside Paul and George. Since 1989, he has toured the world with his all-star band for over 35 years. In 2018, the sick boy from the dingle knelt at Buckingham Palace and rose as Sir Richard Starkey. In 2025, at 84, he released a country album. It was his 21st solo record. He still ends every show, every interview, every message the same way: peace and love. The boy who couldn't read at 8. The boy who nearly died 3 times before turning 14. The boy who found a drum in a hospital ward and never let go of it. Today, Ringo Starr turns 86. Happy birthday, Ringo. Peace and love. If this story made you smile, subscribe. We tell the stories behind the music every week. Stay with us.